All right. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Oh, there's my chat. Hi, everybody in the live chat. Hi, everybody watching me live. I am going to hide the live chat for the moment because, as frequent viewers know, first let me open up my drink here. Hang on. Oh, isn't that the most satisfying sound in the world when you're thirsty? Lemon lime seltzer water, because there's nothing in it. It's like drinking soda, but it won't kill you. Anyway, as longtime regular viewers know, I don't interact with the live chat right away. I answer questions that have been pre-submitted by my wonderful, lovely Patreon patrons, so I'm going to go to that first. So if you have a question for me in the live chat, please hang on to it until later in the show when I am interacting more directly with the live chat, and also especially if you are planning on making a super chat donation or something like that. I, of course, welcome that and appreciate the generosity, but hang on to it until I'm paying more attention to the live chat, because otherwise I'm going to miss it and I won't be able to acknowledge you on the show. So, with all of those explanations and caveats out of the way, let me turn now to my first question from a Patreon patron, and it is from Ayame, who says, "What's the dumbest thing you've heard someone say?" That's such a broad question. I don't know if I can honestly say, hey, I'm taller now. I don't know if I can honestly say what the dumbest thing I've ever heard someone say. I don't have like a stock answer. Within the last couple of days, one of the dumbest things I've heard people say is people who are defending Donald Trump by saying, basically saying, well, yeah, he did ask Ukraine and now China to open investigations into his political opponent, Joe Biden. But it's not wrong what he did because he did it right out in the open and he made it clear what he wanted. As though committing a crime is okay as long as you do it out in the open and you're upfront about it. So that struck me as like, this can't possibly be their defense, right? Yeah, the president of the United States solicited foreign interference in his reelection in his favor, but he was upfront about what he wanted. So what's the big deal? That's got to be one of the dumbest one of the dumbest things that I've heard in a very long time. So, next question is from Sam. And Sam says, since making the switch to vegetarianism, are there any foods that you had previously disliked or never tried and found that you actually enjoy? For me, though I'm not a vegetarian, my wife is, so we eat a lot of those meals. I've discovered jackfruit and found a new appreciation for portobello mushrooms, especially in tacos. How about you? Definitely the mushroom thing. I've never tried jackfruit, so I don't know. I've heard that jackfruit is good though. Like I've heard that the jackfruit is really delicious and is a good addition to a vegetarian or a vegan diet. I've just never actually tried it myself. But mushrooms, big time. I mean I liked mushrooms before, but mushrooms were like something that it was like a pizza topping or something that you put in a salad or that kind of thing. And I've discovered I haven't had one lately, but for a couple weeks there, maybe a month or two ago, I was going through a very heavy phase where I was having like a sauteed portobello mushroom cap, and I would do it up like a burger. I'd have like a cheeseburger, but it would be a portobello mushroom cap instead of a cheeseburger. And oh man, that's good. So yeah, I since becoming a vegetarian, I have rediscovered. I liked mushrooms in the first place, but I have rediscovered mushrooms as an entree type of dish. And oh man, I don't know what I'd do without him. Next question is from Tom McDonald, who I believe I saw in the chat there. Hi, Tom. And Tom says, Steve, in your opinion, what is the most likely way Democrats in the House will screw up Trump's impeachment? I'm writing this on Monday, so if they've already screwed the pooch by ask away time this Friday, no fair claiming that's how you predicted they'd do it. God damn it, Tom. You take things away, you take things away. Well, so far they haven't screwed it up. Let's all keep our fingers crossed that they will continue to not screw it up. Most of the time when the Democrats screw something up, it's because they have chosen to take the coward's path instead of the bold, courageous path. The Democrats, look, I am a registered Democrat. I vote Democrat. I'm not embarrassed or ashamed by that. But when the party does embarrass me, when the party does make me shake my head and go, oh, Jesus Christ, which it does from time to time, it's almost always because they're being cowards. They're the default position of the Democratic Party establishment is one of cowardice and one of caution and one of excessive caution, I would argue. So if they screw up impeachment, it will be because they don't strike while the iron is hot. They don't pull the trigger when they need to. They don't push hard enough. They're too apologetic. They're too moderate. They're too worried about not alienating Republicans, which is a really weird concern to have when you're impeaching a Republican president. But anyway, so yeah, I think it'll be, if they screw it up, it'll be something like that. It'll be because they do what they usually do when they fuck up, which is they're cowardly and they're wishy-washy and they're indecisive and they're trying to triangulate things and calculate things too much instead of doing what, to be fair, some Democrats have been saying all along that they should do. Elizabeth Warren has said it. Kamala Harris has said it. That it shouldn't be a political issue. They should impeach Trump because it is the right thing to do, because it is their duty as public servants to use whatever means are at their disposal to remove this utterly, grotesquely unfit man from office. And the political ramifications of that for them and their re-election campaigns are irrelevant. That's not what you were elected. You weren't elected to get reelected. You were elected to do the work of the people. And the work of the people right now is to get Donald Trump the hell out of the White House, or to do everything you possibly can to achieve that goal. So yeah, if they fuck it up, it'll be because they do what they always do when they fuck up, which is they act like chicken shits and cowards and moderates and mealy-mouthed people instead of acting strongly and boldly and doing what's right. Next question is from Dr. Babylon. So the impeachment process has finally begun. I didn't expect this to ever happen, and I'm starting to think there's a chance this could actually lead to Trump's removal from office. The day it was announced, I had a disagreement with my mom about the potential consequences of doing this. My mom was worried this will just energize Trump's base. My read on the situation is that Trump's base already believed Democrats were trying to remove him from office, so this doesn't change anything in that regard. My mom was also worried because, in her words, Pence is electable, and I disagree with that as well. My mom didn't appreciate being reminded of this, but Trump was electable. Pence is exactly the sort of conservative politician that Republican voters rejected when they elected Trump in the 2016 primary. Trump commands a loyalty from his supporters that goes beyond mere partisanship. Should Pence succeed Trump as president, he will not inherit Trump's cult of personality. On the contrary, he'd be regarded with suspicion by many of Trump's supporters. Thoughts? That is a really interesting angle that I had never considered. Because usually when people talk about removing Trump and then leaving Pence to take over, they talk about, well, Pence is a lot calmer, Pence is a lot more rational, a lot more clear thinking, a lot more disciplined. Pence, with a Senate that supports him, could actually maybe even do more damage than Trump would do, because Trump is just all over the place, and Trump is just, in addition to everything else Trump is completely inept. He's almost buffoonishly incompetent. And Pence isn't. Like, Pence is evil. Pence is fucking just evil. But he's competent. He could be an administrator. He could be an effective executive. That's what I was trying to say. Effective sounds like a medicine, doesn't it? It sounds like some kind of recently patented commercial medicine. But yeah, but the idea that if Pence took over after Trump were removed, that he would lose a lot of support from Trump's base because of the mere fact that he wasn't Trump, that's a really interesting angle. And you might have something there, because a lot of Trump's especially his really diehard support, it does feel a little bit like cult of personality. Like they're attracted to Trump because he is who he is, because he is such an erratic person, because he is so transgressive, because he does seem to know and care nothing about the requirements or the expectations for a person in his office. Like that's what they like about it. So if Pence came in and was doing a more straight-laced, buttoned-down, disciplined version of Trump's act, he might lose a lot of Trump's people. I don't think that would definitely happen, but I think that's a possibility that I never really thought about until I read your question. So I think that's a really insightful point. And it's something that, that might work in our favor if Trump is to actually be removed from office. But the other thing is, and I want to make this broader point about impeachment. A lot of people have said, and a lot of Democrats have said, like rank and file Democratic voters and Democratic politicians who were a little slow to jump on board the impeachment train. They've said things like, well, this will energize Trump's base. This is a mistake because this will just energize Trump's support. And my response to that, and I've thought about that a lot, and I've had a lot of different reactions to it over the months and months and months that we've been talking about impeachment and talking about the Mueller investigation and all of this. And I feel like I've landed here. I don't think we should worry about what we will do to Trump's base. If the Democrats acting to hold Trump accountable and impeach him and then push for his removal energizes Trump's base, so be it. Worry about energizing our base if that concerns you. If you as a Democrat are worried about impeachment energizing Trump's base, what are you going to do to energize our base? Because we have them outnumbered. I got news for you. Hillary Clinton was not a terribly popular candidate for a lot of people. She did not she did not capture the imagination the way Barack Obama did. She still beat Trump in the popular vote by 3 million votes. So even when we nominate a candidate who isn't necessarily the first choice of a lot of people and fails to energize the base quite as much as we might have hoped or we might have seen in the past, the Democratic candidate still beat Trump in the popular vote by 3 million votes. So we have them outnumbered. So let them energize their base. Let's energize our base and beat them. There's a wonderful moment in Ken Burns' Civil War documentary where Shelby Foote is talking about General Grant. And he's talking about how one of the things about General Grant was that he would get impatient with his subordinates spending too much time speculating about what General Lee was going to do on the other side. And Shelby Foote has this moment where he, sort of assuming the character of Grant, says, stop worrying about what General Lee is going to do to us. The way you talk about him, you think he's going to do a somersault and land in our rear. Stop worrying about what he's going to do to you and start worrying about what you are going to do to him. And that's what the Democrats need to do, I think. They need to stop worrying about what Trump and his supporters, his energized base, are going to do to them and start worrying about what they are going to do to Trump, both in terms of impeachment and removal, and if that doesn't happen for whatever reason, in terms of beating his ass in the election next year. Let him energize his base all he wants. Fuck those people. You're not going to win them over. And you're not going to win the election by staying on their good side. If they're still supporting Trump at this point, to hell with every last one of them. Focus on our people. Focus on turning our people out to the polls. That's what we need to worry about. So yeah, at this point, after all this talk of impeachment, I do get a little impatient with the people who are like exercising caution and recommending that we kind of pull back a little and go, oh, and I don't know, impeachment's going to energize Trump's base. Fuck them. Fuck them. Energize our base. And in the meantime, do what you have to do, which is do everything you can to remove Trump from office. But yeah, the point about Pence and losing the cult of personality is a really good one. Next question is from Grumpy Otter. I don't have a question, just wanted to say thank you for the no music version of the Facepalm 5. It was so kind of you and it sounds great. Well, thank you. And I just wanted to read that on the air to let people know that the most recent episode of the Facepalm 5 does have a no music version that I uploaded unlisted. And it's linked in a card at the beginning of the video and also in the description of the video. So not just Grumpy Otter, but a couple of people over the past few months have mentioned that either just as a matter of taste, or because they have they're easily distracted by background music, or they find it difficult to concentrate on what I'm saying. If there's background music, they have said the background music is a problem for them. So I uploaded a separate version of it that is exactly the same as the main version. It just doesn't have the background music on it. And yeah, I'm glad that you like it. I will keep doing that for as long as I do the Facepalm 5 in that format. I think after episode, this is a little bit of a programming announcement. I think after episode 100 of the Facepalm 5, which is coming up in a couple of months, I do it every 2 weeks, and the most recent one was number 91. So after episode 100, I'm going to change the format of Facepalm 5, and I'm going to start doing it as a live stream. And that will not have background music underneath me as I'm talking. I'll have music at the beginning when it starts, but then that'll fade down. And while I'm actually talking, it won't have background music. So it won't be an issue for very much longer. But between now and then, I will be putting up a separate, no background music version of the Facepalm 5 until I get to the point where I'm going to switch format. So, but I appreciate people asking me for that, and I'm glad that it's been of use to people. Next question is from Michael Hainline. I figure everyone else is going to ask about the impeachment opinion question, so I'll ask something light and fun. Do you play any games, be it board games, card games, video games, etc.? If so, what are your favorites? I have a lot of board games, but we don't really play them all that often. I mean, I'm not like a huge board gamer, but, I have like Monopoly and Risk and Scrabble and Clue and, a couple of other ones. I have a really old, Trivial Pursuit, which I love, and a really old, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire home game that we used to play a lot. But we don't really play them all that much. And as far as video games, yeah, I just got a RetroPie, a Raspberry Pi with like 15,000 old games on it, and I've been playing that when I have a spare moment or two, playing like classic NES games and Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo games and arcade games, which are fun because not all of them, but a lot of the arcade games, when you play them on the Raspberry Pi, like all you have to do is push the select button on the controller to insert a coin, and as long as you keep inserting coins, you can't die. So you can always beat the game as long as you have time to play it through, because you keep dying, you just keep pumping imaginary coins into that fucker and you'll beat it, which really helps my ego because I am not a hugely proficient gamer. But yeah, so I play that a lot, and I've also been playing some wonderful giving, caring, benevolent soul uploaded a bunch of Doom 2 levels to the Internet Archive's MS-DOS software archive. And I've been playing Doom 2 in my web browser on an emulator from the Internet Archive. Again, when I need a break from editing or something, and I just need to kind of zone out and do something. So I put in cheat codes to Doom 2 and just destroy demons for a few minutes, because that's something I played when I was a kid. I remember playing Doom and Doom 2 and the original, not the original, but the original first-person Wolfenstein 3D on my computer when I was a teenager. So that brings back a lot of memories. Those are the kind of things that I play. But I don't play them very often because I just don't have time. I'm almost always working on YouTube shit or watching stuff on TV, like doing non-game related stuff. But yeah, those are the kind of games I like to play when I have a moment and I feel like playing some games. Next question is from Villa Lade. I was thinking about Far Beyond the Stars, one of the greatest episodes in all Star Trek history. It is truly exceptional in deviating from the customary sci-fi genre assumptions. That is, to some extent, trying to break the fourth wall. Yeah, the episode offers the in-story explanation about wraiths sending a false vision, but in the end, it engages the audience in a way that is different from any Star Trek episode I can think of. Benny is one of us. I feel sad that they did not end the series with a cut to Benny sitting in the director's chair, which I gather was an idea that was tossed around. My question is, can you think of any other example of such a break with storytelling expectations in the history of Star Trek? Not really. No, I can't really. I can't really think of any off the top of my head, and I don't know if there are any that are quite as off model as Far Beyond the Stars. I agree. Far Beyond the Stars is one of the best Deep Space Nine episodes, and one of the best anything episodes. One of the best episodes in all of Star Trek. And it is, and one of the things that makes it great is that very thing, is the fact that it is so different. It is, yeah, there is a little bit of a sci-fi, like, oh, it's a vision that the you know, but you know, that's not, that doesn't wind up being important. What winds up being important is the realization that Cisco / Benny has as a result of that experience. And yeah, it's a great episode. And my favorite episode, The Visitor, is off model in a lot of ways too, but it's not as off model and not as much of a departure from the standard format as Far Beyond the Stars. Yeah, you're right. Benny in Far Beyond the Stars is one of us. He's not a, he's you know, he looks and sounds like Cisco, but he's not Cisco. But when he's Benny, and he's just a guy on Earth in the 20th century dealing with the problems that people like him on Earth dealt with in the 20th century, and that's what makes it great. So no, I don't think I mean, if anybody in the live chat or in the comments later has another suggestion, please feel free to share it. But I think Far Beyond the Stars is one of the most unique Star Trek episodes ever, because it spends so little time trying to be a typical Star Trek episode, which I think is just wonderful. Next is this comment from Benjamin Fife. I'll just put this here because it seems like you could have made it. Now, this is a link to something, and I am going to show this to you all. I watched it earlier, and I thought it was really, really funny. So I'm going to show this to you, and I'm going to... I'll provide some voices for it. How about that? Because you'll see what it is. It's like an animated GIF type of thing. So I should have done this before, but I'll just do this in real time on the air, because that's exciting for people, right? Isn't that exciting for people? So we'll go to add media file. Okay. So I'm gonna restart this here, but you can see what it is. Okay, here we go. Mr. Worf, we've got a serious problem on our hands. Trump. He seems hell-bent on continuing these shenanigans regardless of the cost. He is a stubborn and arrogant man. That may be true, but I hope he's not a fool. He's risking the entire defense posture. Why can't he see that? I suspect the president cannot see anything right now except for one man. You mean Biden? The president sees him as a political threat. These favors are attempts to humiliate Biden in the eyes of the voters, to force him to endure tweet after tweet. Are you telling me that this is a political vendetta? It would not be the first time an American politician has put his own interests ahead of those of the public. Something has to be done. And then it starts over. So there you go. You know, I did not make that. Unfortunately, I cannot take credit for that. But yeah, that is hilarious. And thank you so much, Benjamin, for sharing that. And I wish I'd had a little bit, or I had taken more time to maybe rehearse that so I could get the line readings a little closer and, you know, do a little bit more of a Cisco or a Worf voice. So I think I got a little close to Worf's typical cadence. So I'll take credit for that. But that's hilarious. Thank you for sharing that. Next question is from John Burnsy. Have you seen this new video from Lindsay Ellis? Very funny. She talks about how a number of new Disney movies are woke. Well, when it comes to gender issues, but the whole racial stuff in the original is kind of washed in some way. And then there's the link. And yeah, and John, you also, you made like a really just super, super long post before that question. And I apologize, but I just cut that out because I ask people when they post questions to try and keep it short and concise. And some people just completely ignore that. And I wish they wouldn't. But yours just, it went on and on and on, and then there wasn't really a question, and then you had a question at the end, so I clipped it to the question at the end. So I apologize for not sharing everything you wrote, but I do ask that people keep the questions as short as they possibly can. And when possible, if I can edit it down while maintaining the spirit of the question, I try to do that. But yes, actually, I watched Lindsay's video. I think the day it was posted, wasn't it posted like on Wednesday? It was posted earlier this week, and I think I watched it the first day it was posted, and I thought it was really interesting. I am not a huge Disney fan. Like, I have still not seen quite a few of the Disney animated films, the animated classics. And some of them I have seen maybe once and then never seen again, and I couldn't really tell you a whole lot about them. Like Beauty and the Beast and The Little Mermaid. I've seen them once maybe each, and I can tell you roughly what happens, but I can't like give you any kind of informed critique because I just don't remember them that well. But yeah, I thought the point she makes about how the remakes, the sort of live action or realistic CGI remakes of the classic Disney animated films, seem interested in doing some very sort of superficial rehabilitation on the way the old movies handled gender, but they are completely ignoring the problematic ways that the old movies handled race. And I thought that was a really, really interesting point, and a really important point. Like, it's great that they are wanting to rehab how they treat female characters and make, you know, if they're going to remake their old movies and new versions to fix the gender problems with it, like, that's great. But the way they seem to be handling the racial problems in the old movies is by just sort of pretending that they weren't even there, you know, which is its own problem. So yes, I did see Lindsay's video and I thought it was excellent. Next question is from Alan Norton. How do you feel about the concept of transracialism? For some context, I recently saw a group of very left-leaning people on Twitter have a conversation about how it isn't a real thing, and were using arguments that sounded a whole heck of a lot like those that very right-wing people use to dismiss transgender individuals. And I was wondering how you felt about the issue. The main thing I feel about the issue is that I don't really feel as a white person that it's my issue to have a very strong opinion on. I feel like people of color should have the most say in this, and that I should take my cue from them, and to the extent that I have an opinion on it. And most people of color that I have read or heard express an opinion on transracialism have described it in such a way as to describe it as being fundamentally different from a transgender person. A trans person, I think it goes to trying to understand what it means when a person is a transgender person. When a person is a transgender person, it means that the gender they were assigned at birth is the wrong gender. That is not their gender. And even though we use a lot of language in casual speech, like, you know, she was born a man, but she became a woman, or vice versa, I don't think that actually describes what happens when you're a trans person. I think when you come out as a trans person, you are acknowledging and sharing with the world something about yourself that has always been true. You are just now expressing it and showing it to everybody and being open about it. So when a person comes out as a trans woman, let's say, after having lived as a man, they aren't a man becoming a woman. They're a woman who was assigned the incorrect gender at birth. So a trans woman is a woman, not a person who became a woman at a certain point. A trans woman is a woman. Whereas a person who is a white person but then says, but now I am a black person. I am a transracial black person. That's not the same thing. You know, that's not, you're not, because unless you are claiming that you have always been black and you are just coming out as black now, like, but it's difficult for me to see how that works. Like, if it is a real thing, and if it does deserve the same level of respect and understanding as a person deserves for their gender identity if they are trans, I'm completely open to that. But my understanding of it, and hearing various people of color who have opined on the subject describe it, it doesn't sound like it's the same thing. It doesn't sound like a person who claims to be transracial is describing the same thing that a person who is transgender is describing. But I'm open to being corrected about that. I say up front, I am not terribly educated on the issue, and even if I were super educated on the issue as a white person, it's not necessarily my place to be telling people what's what and how they should feel about it or what they should do about it. But that just with my limited knowledge and what little bit I know about it, those are my feelings on it. But if anybody knows more, if anybody has more information or has something to say that is counter to what I just said, please feel free to share in the chat or the comments or anywhere else. Next question is from Ahoyerno, who says, last week I was having a job with a friend and she told me she usually takes another route. This route doesn't have much light and she needs light for safety. Once again, I realized that women have these background concerns they're constantly working with. In college, I knew which of my roommates had their periods because they'd often ask me for painkillers, courtesy of my sporadic less-than-monthly migraines. With painkillers, they acted like nothing was happening, even if they had more pain than a man could handle. Last year, my father had to have gastric surgery and was put on a diet of no gassy vegetables, onions, garlic, beans, no alcohol, and no red meat for a week. He complained about it to no end until I remarked that pregnant women have to go through that diet for about a year, including breastfeeding. Let's not forget childbirth. By all measures and statistics, it's one of the worst pains someone could ever endure. Many mothers will say things like, that's almost as painful as giving birth, something my wife did without epidural twice. She knew what she was going to endure, and she chose to do it without painkiller. Ask a man, and they'll all refer to epidurals. Very few, if any, would choose the pain. Seriously. Not to be glib or anything, but women routinely deal with issues that men can't even imagine unless they listen and believe. Are men the weaker sex? Any experiences of your own? Well, the thing to know about men being the weaker, about women being the weaker sex, is that it was us men who gave them that label. Like, I'm pretty sure women didn't decide on their own, you know what, we've thought about it and we're actually the weaker sex. That term weaker sex and the application of it to women, I would bet quite a lot of money that was the origin of that was male, that men came up with that. So that's all you need to know about that. Are men the weaker sex? I don't think it's fair to label one sex or the other as weaker because it depends on what you're talking about. What do you define weakness as? You mean tolerance for pain? I mean, I guess if you could somehow come up with an average for how much pain the average woman can tolerate versus how much pain the average man can tolerate, you might be able to draw some kind of conclusion and say that there is one sex that is weaker than the other of the two primary sexes based on that. But that's even that is subjective, you know, and that would be an average. It wouldn't have anything necessarily to say about any given individual. So no, I think the whole concept is not worth much more than just as a rhetorical device. You know, I don't think there really is a meaningful weaker sex or stronger sex. But we men have set up things in certain ways, or we haven't set it up, but we benefit from certain structures that have already been in place that were set up to benefit men. And one of those things is, yeah, we expect women, or we take for granted the pain that women feel. And we feel completely at liberty to whine and piss and moan when we feel similar pain that they are expected to deal with every day and not complain. But if it happens to us, you know, well, we want everybody to hear about it. This is terrible. Excuse me. That was the worst sneeze anybody's ever had, and I don't care what anybody says. I'm going to stop this live stream right now because I sneezed just that one time. I'm miserable. I'm going to lay down and go to bed, and I want people to bring me soup, and I want to just watch TV and be left alone. That was like a dramatic presentation of what it's like. But yeah, I wouldn't go as far as to say that men or women are actually the weaker sex. But yes, the world is set up in a way that privileges men, and one of the ways that it privileges us is that we get to piss and moan about our aches and pains, and women who often feel the same aches and pains, or even a good deal worse, are expected to just sort of accept it as their lot in life, and we men don't particularly care. So yeah, that's a very, very valid point, and something that us men should be very aware of. Next question is from Lynn Simpson. With everything that's happened and is happening related to the whistleblower impeachment scandal, what has surprised you the most? Honestly, this is going to sound really cynical, but what has surprised me the most is that the Democrats are actually moving to impeach him. Dr. Babylon mentioned in his question that he didn't expect that we would even get to this point. He never expected that the Democrats would even move forward seriously on impeachment. And here we are. Part of the reason for that is that Trump just keeps doing flagrantly impeachable shit right out in the open so that they really have no choice. But yeah, I think the most surprising thing to me is that the Democrats in the House of Representatives have decided to seriously pursue this. Because honestly, I hoped they would. I thought they should have a long, long time ago. I thought there was plenty there that they could impeach him over. But I'm pleasantly surprised that this is actually happening. I don't hold out a lot of hope that it will actually yield my preferred result. Like I still am not hanging a lot of hope on Trump actually being removed as a result of the impeachment process. But yes, I'm surprised pleasantly that it is even happening. I would have to say that's probably the most surprising thing. It is nothing that Trump has done has really surprised me. Trump has done shit that is just completely in character for him, which is why he ought to be impeached. And the Republicans are licking his boots and kissing his ass and defending him every which way, which is what they have done ever since he won the election. So that doesn't surprise me either. It doesn't surprise me that they're acting shamelessly because they've shown themselves over and over again that they have no shame and they have no dignity and they have no moral compass. And all they care about is being in power and keeping themselves in power and protecting their power. That's all they care about. So that doesn't surprise me any. It disappoints me. It upsets me. It turns my stomach, but it doesn't surprise me. But the Democrats actually showing a little bit of a backbone and starting the impeachment process, that does surprise me. Next question is from Jan Beek from Willach, Germany, EU. Hey, Steve, first things first. You are doing a great job in entertaining and educating people. Great work. Well, thank you, Jan. So now to the serious part. In the last Ask Away, you mentioned that you would love to have some kind of a world president as a control mechanism for the several sovereign nation presidents to keep everything in balance. Hope I got you right on this. I once listened to an audio book that, in very short, is set in the near future, and people are doing everything to finally get a world government. So to have someone to manage the globalized and way too powerful companies that are playing with nations and doing what they want, while the normal people are suffering, etc., etc. The interesting twist now was that in the end, it became more and more clear that this was exactly what the gigantic global companies wanted and intended through propaganda and media control to happen, because now they only needed to corrupt one government and control everything even easier than having to deal with hundreds of individual nations. So my question is, wouldn't it be way better to break this global company in pieces than to globalize governments? Keep the decisions as close to the people as possible may be better than redirecting power further up that ivory tower that nobody really understands how it works. Thoughts? Cheers, Jan. Well, yeah, and I think our friend Some Random Geek, who is in the chat, will probably agree with that to an extent. And I agree with it too. My idea of a world government is not necessarily a world government in the same sense that, say, the United States has federal and state governments. The world government would not be as powerful or have as much sovereignty or jurisdiction as I think a lot of people as a lot of people assume in my imagination when they hear things like the one world government or the global government. I envision the global government as a kind of scaffold that sort of ties everything together so that when there are international disputes, that the disputes can be resolved in a way without resorting to war and violence, and so that there can be representatives on a global level that meet and work together and conduct business and conduct the various businesses of their countries that can be elected and can serve the various people of their countries in a way that is democratic, so that people who say, oh, the president of the United States has so much influence over the entire world, but only people in the United States are able to vote for them. That's not fair. Like that would be ameliorated a little bit. I mean, the concern of having a one world government and now all these corrupt corporations only have to corrupt one government, like that would be a serious concern. I agree with that. But I don't think that the one world government, in my mind, should replace the other governments that are already there. It should operate analogous to how the federal government in the United States works with the state governments, where the state governments are still there and still have a lot of authority and still have important things to do. They're just under an umbrella of the federal government. And with the one world government that I am envisioning, the international government, it would be just a level above. There would be a government above the federal government that represents a higher authority and handles things on an international level that the federal government of the United States, for example, isn't really able to handle, or it isn't appropriate for that government to handle. So I don't think that problem would exist, or at least it wouldn't be as urgent of a problem in the idea that I have. But yeah, if there was just a one world government, then it was, the ultimate government that everybody answered to, and everything sort of trickled down from that, to coin a phrase. Then yeah, having a corporation say, oh, that's what we want because we only have to corrupt one government. Yeah, that would be a problem. But I don't think that's exactly the arrangement I'm proposing. Next question is from Isaiah Taylor. Hi, Steve. How's it going? I just wanted to know your thoughts on this so-called hustle culture. Hustle culture is the belief that constantly working and never taking time for yourself is the key to success. Usually, the goals are more self-fulfilling and rather self-centered than helping the society as a whole. Even more insulting about hustle culture is that it's used for bragging more than hard work. It's meant for you to feel sorry and ashamed at yourself for not grinding every step of the way to achieve said greatness. You see this a lot on Instagram, from athletes to cosplayers to wannabe singers who flex that they have it all even when they've had help from their friends along the way. Moreover, such bragging usually glosses over the unfair circumstances that every individual has, i.e. being helped by parents as opposed to not having enough money to start a business. In conclusion, I had just watched the 2019 Apollo 11 movie and was amazed by the collective teamwork that it took to put humans on the moon, and then 50 years later lament how far we've fallen. I believe that this is one of the reasons we have so much violence in our society. We ignore each other for our own personal gain. The sense of community is gone, replaced only by the vapid accumulation of fake wealth, prosperity, and above all, fame. Your thoughts. P.S. I would love to meet you one day if you're in the Tallahassee area. Well, thank you. I would like to meet you too if I'm ever in the Tallahassee area. I don't know when I will be next. I haven't been to Tallahassee in almost 20 years. I had a really, really good time when I was there, but it's been 20 years since I was in Tallahassee, so I don't know when I'll get back there next. But yeah, if I'm ever in the area and I remember, I would love to meet with you. But yeah, as far as hustle culture, yeah, I mean, the idea, I think it's the idea that a lot of people like to flatter themselves when they have had success. They like to tell themselves and also tell other people, well, I have had this success because I hustled for it, because I busted my ass, because I worked hard, and that's the reason I've been so successful. And if you aren't successful, well, hey, don't blame me and don't blame anybody else. Blame yourself because you didn't hustle for it. You didn't work hard enough. If you work hard enough, you'll get there. And that's a fallacy because, as you mentioned in your question, there are certain inequalities that just affect people that you don't necessarily have a lot of control over. And it's not fair to say, well, I succeeded and why can't you succeed, when the person you're pointing at may face challenges that you didn't face, or may be unable to overcome the challenges in the same way that you overcame the same challenges. There's all kinds of reasons why a person who might be an incredibly hard worker is not able to achieve the same level of success as someone else. It's not just, well, you just didn't work hard enough. So I think that whole thing is fallacious. But it's a way for people to pat themselves on the back who have succeeded. It's a way of them of being able to take full credit for it and say, I got all of this. This is all me. I got this on my own. I busted my ass for this, and I deserve this, and I earned every bit of this. And it's almost never true. You benefit from help from other people. You benefit from certain privileges you have. You benefit from all kinds of things. Nobody gets anywhere all by themselves. So yeah, I think it's a perversion of a good idea. Like we should value hard work. We should encourage people to work hard and pursue their dreams. I don't know about the whole not taking time for yourself thing. I think it's important to be able to take time for yourself. That's one of the things that's shitty about the way we work low-income people and people in poverty in our cultures. They have to work all the time. They don't really have the option to take time off. It would be nice if people did have the option to take time off when they needed it without having to worry about how far behind they're going to put themselves if they're not working. That's a real problem. People should be able to take time off from work when they need to relax and recharge and take a vacation and just kind of chill out and then get back to work when they're ready to get back to work. So that the whole "don't take time off" thing doesn't really appeal to me. But yeah, we should encourage people to work. Being a hard worker, being dedicated, being disciplined, being willing to get out there and bust your ass, like those are positive traits. But when you look at it from the point of view of, I busted my ass and I got where I am, and if you're not where I am and you want to be, well, it's because you haven't busted your ass. See, it's your fault. Like when you turn it around like that, it becomes really toxic, and I'm not a fan of that at all. Like it's a shame that you take something that is actually a positive thing and you turn it around and you make it all about you, and you make it selfish, and you make it an excuse for you to put yourself above other people and to blame other people for their problems and their whatever deficiencies they might have in their life that aren't their fault. And it gets really shitty when you look at it that way. Next question is from Nick Anderson. I brought up your point about the unlikelihood of slavery not being part of the Ferengi's history, especially with how they treat women, to another Trekkie, and she brought up a point I hadn't considered. When you make someone a slave, you effectively remove them from the economy. They can't participate or contribute monetarily, and this would seemingly go against all the principles of a culture obsessed with profit. If you're a slave, you're not making profit. Not for yourself, anyway. So here's my question. I'll keep it brief. Thoughts? This is actually, it's very close. Your friend's point is very close to something that I brought up. Jason and I were talking about this. Jason Harding, who I am the co-host with on Ensign's Log and Late Seating, who is the creator and grand poobah genius, etc., of Opinionville. And my best buddy. Hi, Jason. We were talking about this right after that video went up, actually, when I mentioned like the Ferengi saying, Quark saying like, we never had slavery. And me saying in the video, yeah, right, they never had slavery. The Ferengi never had slavery. And Jason said something very similar to what your friend said, Nick, which is, if you look at it from a certain point of view, it does make sense for the Ferengi to honestly, truthfully say like that they never had slaves. Because Ferengi believe, they believe in profit, but they also believe that everyone should have the right to pursue profit. And if you are a slave, as you mentioned as you say in your question there, you are not a part of the economy and you're not making profit for yourself. So if you're a slave, you have been denied the right to make profit. And to a Ferengi, that would be an unacceptable breach of civil rights. So when you look at it that way, yeah, it does kind of make sense. It is a good point. Now, I still think that it's a little unrealistic to say that a society as preoccupied with commerce and profit as the Ferengi never, ever practiced slavery. But I suppose if you want to assume that Quark is telling the truth and you want to make that fit, that is a good way to do it. To say, well, the Ferengi chase profit, but they revere profit, and they believe that everybody has a right to make a profit or to try to make a profit, and slavery would not fit within that system. So I do think it's a good workaround. I still think my answer is the more likely one, but I think if you want to say that Quark was telling the truth and that the Ferengi really have never had slavery, that is a good explanation for it. It's the way they view profit and the chasing of profit as a human right. Next question is from Matthew Rick. It's autumn. What is your favorite kind of apple? Lately I eat mostly Granny Smith. I like a nice Granny Smith because it's a nice combination of tart and sweet. And the ones that they have at my grocery store are a nice size. Like it's a good size apple. It's not huge, but it's not really tiny either. And you can cut it into quarters and enjoy it. I usually have apples as like a side dish when I'll have like a sandwich or, like a rice dish or something. And then I'll have, as a side dish instead of like potato chips or French fries or whatever, I'll slice up a Granny Smith apple and have it. So Granny Smith are my favorite apples, I think. Next question is from Jin Hai. Now that we know that American civics ideas such as checks and balances and separation of powers is some bullshit, and that the cool new way to achieve a political agenda is to lie, break the law, suppress voters, and disregard human life, what do you think should change about what is taught in social studies class? I know schools teach about parties and touch upon things like gerrymandering at an advanced level, but do you think basic civics lessons should be idealistic, or should kids be taught from day one about the reality of party politics, the power of the Senate Majority Leader, and that a president can hide behind legal doctrine developed by their own lawyers and is above the law as long as their party has 34 senators? Well, I think you need to. I think that they need to do both. I think if you are going to teach a government class, especially to kids, to high schoolers, or even to typical college students who enter college at age 18 or so, because I remember when I was in college. And I was a non-typical student. I didn't start college until I was about 25, but many of my classmates were right out of high school, like typical college students. And I was surprised at how much ignorance there was about the basic functioning of American government. Of people who didn't know about the bicameral structure of Congress, who didn't know that the vice president was the president of the Senate, and didn't know how the impeachment process worked, et cetera, et cetera. Things that I learned in high school. I learned as a freshman in high school in my government class, and I guess they didn't learn, or maybe they didn't have that class where they went to school. So I do think it's important to teach students the basics of government. To teach them, and you might call that the idealistic way, to teach them about the Constitution, teach them what it says, teach them how the government is set up and how it works, how it is supposed to work. But I also think you need to go beyond that. And yes, you need to teach students how things actually work, how easily the system that has been laid out for us in the Constitution has been corrupted and can be corrupted, and just things that they need to be aware of. Like you said, like you can basically do whatever you want as long as you have 34 senators. Things like that are important for people to know. So I think they need to do both. But I do not think they should simply teach what our government is on paper and then say, there you go, you're ready to go out and be interested in politics. Like, you need to teach people what is actually going on. But you need to start with that foundation of what the Constitution says and how government is laid out, and then build upon that. But I think civics education is very important. I think we need to do a lot more of that in public schools than we do. I think we need to be educating kids in the United States and in every country, but in my country, we need to educate students about how the government works ideally and how it works practically, so that they are prepared for that and they have that education when they go out into the world and hopefully choose to participate in the political process. Next question is from Wellington Marcus. Did Stuffy and Wilhelmina ever resolve the Sourball controversy? What is Wilhelmina's view on animal torture? How does Stuffy feel about modern Sourball? Am I spelling that right? I'm at work, can't look it up. Anyway, love to the whole gang. Yes, you are spelling it right. And I think Stuffy feels okay about modern Sourball. Modern Sourball is not played with a live mouse. Stuffy's objection to Sourball played by the old rules was that it was played with a live mouse and that the mouse dies as a result of the game. And that was Stuffy's objection. And I think Wilhelmina probably has a big problem with animal cruelty. Like, I don't think Wilhelmina would say she was in favor of animal cruelty. Wilhelmina just has a blind spot about old school Sourball because it was a tradition from where she grew up, and she just was not she was not trained or educated to view it as a bad thing. She viewed it as a good thing because it was a tradition. It was part of what she grew up with. And I wanted Sourball in that episode to be sort of analogous to the way a lot of people around where I grew up and where I live view hunting for sport. When I grew up, I did a video a few weeks ago on my channel about Woodmont, which was a hunting club that I grew up at, basically, that my father worked at for years when I was a kid, and that I have very fond memories of. But Woodmont was a hunting club. People would go there to kill animals for sport, and I look back at that now, and I don't support that at all. And I don't make any excuses for it. I don't think people should be allowed to do it. Like, I don't think you should be allowed to hunt animals for sport. That's it. Like, that's my position. I don't think you should be allowed to do it. And I think Wilhelmina probably feels the same way. She just thought of Sourball differently because she had a blind spot. Have they resolved it? I don't think it's something they probably talk about a lot. I mean, obviously, Stuffy and Wilhelmina are friends now. Like, it contributed to the end of their romantic relationship, but they still get along and they're still friends. So they've resolved it in that way. Like, it's not something that they fight about all the time or that has prevented them from being friends and from caring about each other. But I don't think they talk about it very much. It's something I'll probably revisit at some point. The Stuffy Wilhelmina relationship is a really interesting one to me, and I'm not just going to leave it where it is and just let it be. I think I'm going to continue to explore that relationship as Steve and Stuffy goes on. But yeah, it hasn't been resolved, but it's not something that they probably talk about all that much. Andrew C. Hawkins. I've been following the depraved antics of David Silverman and Richard Carrier off and on, and something occurred to me. It's probably more to do with patriarchy and rape culture in general, but do you think a certain element is attracted to atheism because they think that all notions of sexual propriety are religious in nature, and that by rejecting religion they can act utterly shamelessly and without any regard for personal boundaries? I think there are probably some people who feel that way. I want to be careful here, and because I feel like if I say that a lot of people are attracted to atheism for that reason, that's kind of playing into the hands of a conservative religious stereotype of atheists that I don't think is fair. I don't think most atheists start identifying as atheists because they want to be sexual hedonists or because they reject the idea of sexual propriety or anything. I just don't think that's accurate, and I think that's often used to kind of discredit or defame atheists. And I think people like Silverman and Carrier would have been assholes no matter what their religion was. Like, I don't think David Silverman became an atheist because he felt like it left him more at liberty to be predatory toward women or be shitty toward women. Same thing with Carrier. I think they would have been that way whether they were Christians or Muslims or Jewish or whatever. I just don't think it matters. There are people of all religions who commit acts of sexual violence and disregard boundaries and are just shitty, terrible people in sexual situations. And it doesn't matter whether you're an atheist or what religion you are. I don't think it makes that big of a difference. But yeah, are there some people who maybe view all forms of sexual propriety, all forms of expecting people to respect boundaries as religious constructs, and they say, no, we don't want any of that. We want to have complete freedom. We're not beholden to any gods or any of their rules. Yeah, there probably are some people who are like that, but I don't think it's a draw for many people in atheism. And I think the people you mentioned probably would have been assholes in that regard, whether they were atheists or not. I think they're just shitty people who treat women like shit. and that's just the way they are. And I don't think they were made that way because of atheism. They obviously have taken advantage of the atheist community to mistreat people, but who's to say they wouldn't have mistreated people in their faith community if they had another faith community? Next question is from David Colby. Hey, Steve, I started writing a novel. Shocking. It's about an overworked scientist named Sarah Capel in a dystopic capitalist future that's basically exactly like our present, but slightly worse. Sarah's day job is going to alien planets and finding ways to exploit them fastest for her corporate overlords. She hates it, but is in such crippling debt that she can't escape. And one day, while studying the xenofauna of TRAPPIST-1A, she finds out that the local aliens are more advanced than previously anticipated when they capture her and transform her into an alien-human hybrid for the purposes of invading the human race. Fortunately for us, Sarah is stronger-willed than expected and escapes from the aliens before they take over her mind. Unfortunately for the corporations, they decide to try and dissect her rather than treating her humanely, leading to her escaping, learning to use her new alien superpowers, and finally overthrowing capitalism with her massive army of chitinous horrors. But here's my question. Which is a better line for her to say before she throws the CEO of Novatech out of the 500-story window of their corporate arcology? I'm afraid we have to let you go. Or, hey, don't worry, you have a golden parachute, right? Oh boy. Okay. And now for my regular book blurb. And I hope you don't mind me, David. I'm gonna rush through this because I really want to answer your question. Since it's the spooky month, it's time for the spooky book, Through a Mirror Darkly. If anyone asks, this is a Bible reference, but we both know it's an Enterprise reference. A malignant force spreading through our society is driving men and women to suicide and madness. It creeps through Twitter and social media, lurks in the tail end of YouTube recommendations, and steps out of billboard advertisement. It is the belonging kind, and the only thing standing between it and us are three strangers brought together by fate. The three have an ally in the fight, an extra-dimensional entity known as the Night City, which feeds on humanity's darkest, most debauched desires. If there are no humans left, after all, the Night City has nothing to feed on. But will our savior end up being worse than our enemy? Stranger Things meets 50 Shades of Grey with a massive helping of Animorphs, They Live, and H.R. Geiger. Through a Mirror Darkly is full of sexy body horror, monster fucking, BDSM, and debauchery. It is quite literally the most depraved book I have ever written. Buy it immediately, and there's the link, and the Amazon link is also in the description of this video if anybody wants to check out David's new book or any of his books. Now, as for the question, I am of the firm belief, David, that the better line for her to say when she throws the CEO out of the 500th story window is, "I'm afraid we have to let you go." That is such a fucking awesome line. The golden parachute thing is good. Like, the golden parachute thing is a good line. Like, I like that line. If you decide to use that one instead, I don't think that will be like a disaster. But "I'm afraid to let you go" is just, oh, it's just right there. It's funny. It's a pun, and I love puns. I can hear somebody saying that. It's exactly the kind of like self-consciously corny, like tough guy action hero line that I absolutely love. And I would vote for "I'm afraid we have to let you go" 100 times in a row. I think that is a great, great line, and I think that is the one that you should use. And thank you for asking. And I'm sure it'll be a great story no matter what, but that's what I think you should say. That's what I think she should say. "I'm afraid we have to let you go." Oh, God, that's a great line. Oh, shit. Oh, I love that. Okay. Next question is from Joe McClory. Happy CB Day, Steve. 10-4, good buddy. You have told us your favorite director and movie. I was wondering who your favorite female director and what is your favorite movie from a female director. Oh, Leni Riefenstahl. No, I'm kidding. I thought it would be funny to just lead with a Nazi joke. I was mistaken. There are so many great women directors. I think I might actually have to say, even though she's made some movies that I really don't like, the movies that she's made that I do like have been just amazing. I really, really love Sofia Coppola. And specifically Lost in Translation. If you're asking my favorite movie directed by a woman, it's probably Lost in Translation. I think that's just an awesome movie, and Sofia Coppola wrote and directed that. So that's way up there. I would also have to mention Eve's Bayou, which was directed by Cassie Lemons, who is also an actor. She actually, you might know her, if you don't know her as a filmmaker, she was Clarice Starling's roommate in Silence of the Lambs. That's Cassie Lemons. And she went on to direct a couple of, I think her first movie that she directed is still probably my favorite of hers, which is called Eve's Bayou, which is just a beautiful movie starring Samuel L. Jackson. And she's directing the Harriet Tubman biopic that comes out later this year, that if you haven't seen the trailer for, looks really, really good. That is directed by Cassie Lemon, so I'm really looking forward to that as well. But those are the probably, and I mean, it feels like I'm just going to start mentioning people, and I'm not going to, but Catherine Bigelow, I mean, how can you not mention Catherine Bigelow? She's amazing, and goddamn, she directed Point Break, the original Point Break. And I mean, come on, how can you not mention Catherine Bigelow when you're talking about favorite woman director? She's fantastic. Some random geek rant coming in, man. I just fucking hate liberals sometimes. I'm an anarchist. I hate the concept of private property. It allows very few to control land and charge people rent for housing, a human right that is treated as a commodity. Landlords charging people rent to have shelter is something I want to get rid of. Many of our comrades like Joanna, Foxy, Jezebel, Phoenix, and Jason Harding at one time had to beg online because of rent and fear of being homeless. Hint, hint to the charity links down below. And yet, when I joked about killing all landlords, I get, "My mom is a landlord. Do you want to kill my mom?" As Leto Anor, our great friend Steve, Watch Fucking Legion, has said on Social Justice Alchemy, which Leto Anor, John Brockman, Tom McDonald, Jamie J, and I stream every Saturday at 6 p.m. UTC on the Social Justice Alchemy YouTube channel. Check us out. Leto is a landlord herself. And she also says, kill all landlords. We talk about it a lot on the show. She would love to get rid of the property she owns and rents out to other people. But she is disabled and can't work, so she is forced to rent that property for 300 euros a month to be part of her 4,700 euros a year she lives off of. That is it. Just like how often I will say a cab for all cops are bastards or all cops are bad, I will get someone to say, not all cops. My brother-in-law is a cop and he's nice. Liberals just don't understand that leftists' critiques about cops, billionaires, CEOs, and landlords are not about certain individuals. As you know, it is about the system of power we are critiquing. Being a billionaire is an immoral act in of itself. Guillotine the motherfuckers. And a liberal will chime in with, I guess the small business owners in my area have to die? What? How come liberals don't want to reform white supremacy, ableism, and cis heteropatriarchy, which I agree with? Let's get rid of them instead of reforming them, yet only want to reform capitalism and the state as opposed to getting rid of them. Why are some forms of oppression fine to liberals and others are not? Put simply, liberals are classist. There's no way around that. If you are a liberal, you can't be intersectional or a leftist. How do you tolerate liberals? How can I hate liberals? My mum's one. Actually, I don't get along with my mom, and my mom is not terribly liberal, so just throw that out the window. I was just making a reference to The Office in lieu of anything else to say. The frustrating thing, look, it's not just liberals. Conservatives are the same way. A lot of people instantly flash to an individual that they like, who is an example of the class of people that is being critiqued as a way of trying to discredit the critique. And that can be frustrating because it means you're not engaging at the same level. If you are saying, for instance, there should be no such thing as landlords, and someone comes back at you with, well, but my brother's a landlord and he's great and he takes really good care of his tenants and he's always really, that's not the argument you're making. You're saying that the job of landlord or the position of landlord should not exist. Not because all landlords are horrible people who mistreat people, but because the position is necessarily exploitative, and it leads to exploitation very easily. And it's just not something like you shouldn't have to pay rent to have a place to live. That job shouldn't exist. So your brother might be an awesome guy, and maybe he is a good landlord, but that still doesn't mean that there should be landlords. Like, my landlords are great guys. I have no real problems with my landlords. But if the government passed a law and said, hey, guess what? Nobody has to pay rent to have a place to live anymore. Sorry, landlords. I would be okay with that. I would be completely fine with that. I think that would be a better system than the one we have. So yeah, it's frustrating when you are trying to critique a system and other people are trying to come back at your critique by saying, what about that guy? What about that guy? What about that guy? And that's not the basis of your objection. Your objection is to the system as a whole. And with cops, it's a big thing too. It's just a few bad apples versus there is a systemic problem that needs to be addressed. So it's difficult to communicate when you're arguing with someone like that. And how do I deal with liberals? I'm about half one myself, so I can't be too hard on them. I think I'm a lot more leftist than I used to be, and I'm not quite fully a leftist, but I'm not quite fully a liberal anymore either. This is why I sort of default and say I'm like half social democrat, half democratic socialist, something like that, which is infuriating to people in both of those groups because it's like, you have to be one or the other. But I don't know. But yeah, how do I deal with them? If the way I usually deal with people that annoy me, if I get tired of talking with them, I stop talking to them and I move on to something else. I get on with my life, but that's not always an option. And if you get on with your life every time, then nothing ever changes. So, eventually we're going to have to deal with them, I guess. I don't know. Next question is from Ilhan Bachar, or Bakar. I apologize for mispronouncing that, whichever time I did. Just became a patron after listening to your videos. Yeah, listening. You're mostly my radio when I drive for a few weeks. Have to say, I came for the Star Trek stuff and was very surprised to find out you do political videos too. Since I nodded through most of your politics, not all, I had to open a Patreon account to pledge. Though I have to ask, what's with the stuffed animals? No, wait, that's not my question. Anyway, That was just my new to Patreon rant. You can decide to skip it if it's too long. My question is this. You talked a lot about Discovery, and I generally agree, especially about their right to redesign the atmosphere and feel of the background. They did a great job with the Enterprise and Pike and Friends uniforms, but I think they didn't use that right smartly in one aspect, the Klingons. We love the Klingons. We know them so well. They're part of our family, and they made them so alien. So, yeah. And I know we needed to think of them as bitter enemies, not our longtime friends, but they are our longtime friends. And now Picard will be on soon, and Worf may be on it, maybe other Klingons. So what do you think? Will we get a new design reptilian Worf? Or our old good Worf back, contradicting another show running the same time? If I had to guess, by the way, thank you for becoming a patron, and thank you very much for the question. If I had to guess, I would say if Worf makes an appearance in the Picard show, his makeup will probably be pretty close to what Michael Dorn's makeup was the last time he played Worf. I don't want to say that it'll be exactly the same. I would be surprised if they didn't update the Worf makeup a little bit, but I don't think it will be as drastic a change as the Klingons in Discovery, especially in season 1 of Discovery when they didn't even have hair. You've already seen in season 2 of Discovery, they've begun moving it back in the direction of how it was before the redesign, where now the prosthetics are still mostly the same in terms of like the head shape and the way the ridges work. But now they brought back hair and facial hair, and they're starting to move them back to something that is a little more in line with how they were before. So if we see Worf in Picard, and I would love to see Worf in Picard, I think he'll probably end up looking more or less like he looked before. There might be a few tweaks here and there, a few nods toward the new design maybe, but I don't think Worf will look radically different. I just don't expect that. But, maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out. Next question is from John Gingras. Okay, Steve, fun little question for you. You've just been put in command of the Federation's newest vessel, a time ship. You get to choose the command crew, and you can select anyone from Star Trek past, present, or future. Who do you get to fill these positions? Executive Officer, Chief Medical Officer, Chief Engineer, Chief Science Officer, Chief Con Officer, Chief Communications Officer. Okay, I'm going to go back to the me shot while I answer this. Executive Officer, I got to go with Commander Riker because I keep a picture of Commander Riker in my wallet, and Commander Riker is also the wallpaper on my phone. So how can I not choose Commander Riker as my Executive Officer? Chief Medical Officer, probably Bones. I would go with Dr. McCoy. Chief Engineer, Chief Engineer is a tough one. How can you not choose Scotty? But then again, how can you not choose Geordi? But then again, how can you not choose Chief O'Brien? But then again, how can you not choose Jet Reno from Discovery? Like, there are a lot of really cool chief engineers or engineer type characters that you could pick. I'd probably go with Scotty. I think I'll go with Scotty as my chief engineer. Chief Science Officer, that's got to be Spock. Chief Con Officer, I would go with Data. And Chief Communications Officer... Chief Communications Officer. Who's the wasn't Worf kind of the communications officer on TNG? He was tactical and he did both. Wouldn't it be funny if I picked Worf and Worf would be my comm officer? You didn't. You know what? I'll pick Worf. Because you didn't give me an option for Chief of Security, and I do want Worf on the ship. So we'll go with Worf for Chief Communications Officer, and he can do double duty as Chief of Security as well. So we'll go with that. Again, that's just off the top of my head, but I'm sure people in the chat or in the comments can come up with more intriguing and creative examples. Next question is from Jamie J, who says, have you ever tried Linux or any of the BSD derivative operating systems? Technically, Mac OS and iOS are both BSD derivatives, and Android and Chrome OS are both Linux distributions. And while I'm curious to know whether you have tried these out and enjoy them, the generally corporate And profit-driven nature of these systems just feels different to me from something like Debian. If you've not, would you be willing to try one? I usually recommend Debian to beginners looking to get into full Linux geek territory without a terribly steep learning curve, or an even more beginner-friendly variant of Debian like Linux Mint, Ubuntu, Elementary OS, Zorin OS, Linux Lite, Ubuntu Mate, Netrunner, Emabuntus, Robo Linux, Ubuntu Desktop Pack, or Pingy OS. If you feel the urge to give it a go, I recommend trying it in a virtual machine using something like VirtualBox in your first go. Systems administration can be a fun hobby, and it can come in handy for things like making little Raspberry Pi multi-platform emulator boxes. Jam. Well, you know, the reason why I ordered a Raspberry Pi emulator box instead of trying to build it myself was because I know absolutely nothing about that. And I already made this joke a few weeks ago when I got my new computer and somebody asked me about it. But I feel like my response to your question, Jamie, I would have to say I have a black computer. Like, that's the level of my knowledge. I'm not very tech savvy at all. And I'm not like super eager to become more like I've had to learn a lot as a YouTuber. Like I know a lot about editing, and I know a lot about running a camera, and I know a lot about computers as it relates specifically to that kind of thing. But in terms of like operating systems and systems administration, like I know nothing about that. So yeah, you're barking up the wrong tree, I'm afraid. But I appreciate you thinking enough of me to describe all of that without talking down to me like I didn't have any idea what you were talking about, which I didn't, but I appreciate that level of respect. And final Patreon question from General Contact Unit Problem Child. Suppose tomorrow you woke up in a parallel timeline where instead of meeting and marrying you, your wife went into politics and became the president. Would you want to return to this timeline, even if it meant having Trump as the president again? I mean, see, that's you always give me these terrible choices. Like, I think my wife would be a much better president than Trump, so I wouldn't want to, I mean, I think I would come back to this timeline because because really the only thing that changes is me, right? Like, there's an alternate timeline, so my wife is president instead of Trump, but we're not married in this timeline. So the people in that timeline have it a lot better in that respect than we have. But I would come back to this timeline where my wife and I are still married and Trump is the president, because nothing changes in my timeline the way you describe it in your question, I think. Let me go back and read it. Oh, yeah. It's a parallel timeline. So I would want to stay in my timeline where I'm still married to my wife, because my wife is still president in that other timeline. So they still get what they need. They still get the better end of this, the better deal. I would just stay here. So yeah, I think that's what I would do. I think that's what I would do. I don't think I would jump over to live in the alternate timeline, even though that timeline would have a much better president for however long she's president. No, I would come back here and stay with my wife and just stick out the end of the Trump presidency. I think that's what I would do. Okay, that's it for the Patreon questions. I'm going to turn now to the live chat. So if anybody who is watching this live right now has a live chat, has a live chat, see, that's what I'm saying, Jamie. I don't know about this stuff. Has a question for me in the live chat, please get it ready and go ahead and post it now. And for the rest of the show, I will take questions from the live chat. So here we go. Jaddick Production says, hey, Steve, now that you're about to throw open the gate, could you take me under your wing? I want to learn how to grow a kick-arse YouTube channel. Oh, boy. You're asking the wrong guy. I've been doing this for 10 years, and I am just now scraping at the bottom of 100,000 subscribers. So, I mean, the way I have done it is I have just churned out content and tried to get as good as I possibly can at it. And I have followed my own star. I've made videos about things that I think are important and interesting and fun, and tried to do the best job I can at it. And have been very, very, very lucky to have accumulated something of an audience around this. As far as if all you care about is just growing a channel, I'm probably not the best person to ask, because I really don't know. I've been very, very lucky and have focused largely on content and growing the channel in that way. Seal0626 says, do you have any thoughts on Galaxy Quest? I realized the other day that Wei Yun 6's death with Odo is an uncanny parallel to Quellic's death with Alexander Dane, benediction from an unwilling idol. That, I never made that connection before, but that's really interesting. And yeah, I love Galaxy Quest. I think Galaxy Quest is a terrific movie. And yeah, I've never put those two together, but yeah, that you're right. It is a very similar situation. Nathaniel Robinson says, Steve, how do you address defeatism with regard to climate change? The other day, my 13-year-old son really felt there was nothing he could do. Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, you just have to encourage people to keep doing the best they can. Like all is not lost. We can still do something about it. It's just no individual can do something, but we have to push for social change. We have to push for political change and structural change. But it's not like we're not completely screwed yet. You just have, you just have to accept that it's not all up to you, but that you can play a small part and that you should play that small part. Some random geek says, question, can you please yell tentacle porn? Okay. Tentacle porn! Is that okay? Did I blow? Did I turn far enough away from the mic? Did I blow out your ears? I apologize. I just got a super chat from Moderate Content. Howdy, comrade Steve. Much love from PDX. Thank you very much. Thank you for the love and thank you for the super chat. Here's another one that just came in from Vectorus. Yeah. Vector 85. Longtime fan, first time stream. Thanks for the Aaron tribute. Oh well, thank you for liking it. Yeah, Aaron was a really special part of Star Trek. I was really happy to do that. Why does everyone call Spock Mr. despite being an officer in TOS? I don't know. They should call him Commander Spock, shouldn't they? I don't know. It's just a weird convention that they began at the beginning of the series before they established stuff like that. Although Picard does occasionally call Data Mr. Data. Although you could interpret that as kind of a callback to them calling Spock Mr. Spock. Yeah, it's just something that they established as a convention, and then it just kind of became a thing. Dan Edwards says, what do we think about Bernie hiding his heart problems? Well, I mean, I'm glad Bernie's okay. I feel like he probably shouldn't have hid his heart problems. I don't think that's good. I don't think people should feel like they have to be sick in private, Marai Ziller, when will you and Jack finally accept that whiskey isn't spelled with an E? To Jack, whiskey is very much spelled with an E, and I would love to see you have that argument with him. T-Scream80 says, would you consider doing series of other sci-fi series like Babylon 5, Sequest, Battlestar Galactica? Yes, absolutely. I would definitely. I'm probably going to do Babylon 5 at some point, and I'm almost definitely going to do Quantum Leap as well. I'm working my way through Quantum Leap right now. So I'm definitely going to do Quantum Leap at some point, and I'm probably going to do Babylon 5 at some point. And I'm going to do more than just Star Trek videos at some point. 255 AD says the timeline where my wife is president will stop existing. See, that wasn't in your question. You didn't say that. I think I would still come back to this one. To hell with those people on another timeline. I'm not from there. That's an American attitude for you. Carlisle the Cinephile says, other than the obvious choices like Picard, what kind of upcoming new shows are you excited for? I'm really excited for The Witcher on Netflix. I mean, I'm really excited for. I want to watch The Mandalorian, the new Star Wars series. I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited about the upcoming new season of BoJack. That's something I'm really looking forward to. I'm probably going to watch the second season of Russian Doll. That was really good. Yeah, those are a few off the top of my head. Sean Hartley says, would you watch an animal version on Star Trek, and what different animal species would be the different aliens in it? I probably don't have I don't have enough time to go through what different animals would be what, but yes, I would totally watch an animal version of Star Trek. I wish there were more animal-based versions of other things. Some random geek says, did you make a trigger joke on Facebook last week? Don't you know how ableist it is to do so? You know you can do better, right? Yes, and I meant to go back. I guess maybe I should delete that comment. But yes, I did make a trigger joke on a Facebook thread last week, and you are absolutely right to call me out about that. I should not have done that. That was I should not be using the term triggered so frivolously and flippantly, and it's completely right to point that out to me. So I will try not to do that in the future, and I thank you for pointing that out and for reminding me about that. Yes, it is ableist to do that. We should not make light of trigger warnings because they are important to people. A lot of people actually need them, and they shouldn't be just bandied about as a cheap joke. And it's an easy joke. It's like a reflexive easy joke. So you can't even defend it as I was just joking, because it's not even that great of a joke. So thank you for pointing that out. Phoenix Espresso says, do you have any opinions on the YouTuber Surus? No, I don't. I don't think I even know who you're talking about. Mariah Ziller says, why does Millicent sound exactly like my female husky pup? Like, seriously, exactly the same voice and mannerisms. Well, it sounds like you've got a hell of a nice husky there, if that is the case. A Millicent would say that's why because that's how huskies ought to behave. Some random geek says, why don't you play Minecraft? And what do you mean by I don't want to be one of those players? Did I ever say I don't want to be one of those players? I can't remember saying, but no, Minecraft just doesn't interest me. It just doesn't seem remotely interesting to me. Like, if people play it and have a good time, more power to them, but it's never seemed remotely interesting to me. And if I said I don't want to be one of those players, I can't remember what I meant because I can't remember saying it. Aaron Permet says, did I already give my response to the Area 51 raid? No, I didn't. I don't really know what I think. It just seemed kind of goofy and silly to me. Like, I honestly didn't pay that much attention to it. It just seemed like kind of a goofy thing that some people did. Phoenix Espresso, did you hear about Hugo from the Bible Reloaded coming out as trans? Yes, I heard a little something about it. I still am not paying much attention to the Bible Reloaded people. So, I mean, I'm not, if Hugo came out as trans, I wish Hugo the best as far as that goes, but Hugo and I are not speaking, and Jake and I are not speaking, and I don't think that's ever going to change. But I mean, anybody who comes out as trans, I congratulate them and I wish them the best. Mariah Ziller says, on a serious note, can you scream homeless rights? This is actually really important. Okay. Homeless rights! How is that? Is that okay? Do you need that again? Seal 0626, do you ever consider how anthrocentric Starfleet is? What does red alert mean to someone whose blood isn't red? Strikes me as analogous to flesh-colored band-aids to a person of color. I noticed on rewatch. Yeah, that's one of the problems that you run into when the Star Trek fictional universe becomes too real, because obviously it's called red alert because that's a reference that we humans in the real world in the audience will get. And it wasn't written. It was written for us. It wasn't written so that everything would make perfect sense if the Star Trek world were real and were inhabited by these people. But yeah, it's one of those things that I find that kind of stuff really interesting when problems like that come about because a franchise has run for so long and has been so filled out and populated and is so real in so many ways that you notice things like that. Like, wait a minute, why would they call it red alert if red doesn't mean the same thing to everybody? So yeah, it's a good point. Michael Olson, I have not seen any of Mr. Robot. T Scream says Michael Dorn said he had no interest in going back into the makeup unless they paid him a lot of money. Well, I believe that's what he said before he joined Deep Space Nine as well. So, Andrew Priest said, if you had to do a list of top 50 Trek episodes, would you have to exclude Deep Space Nine? My top 50 would be almost exclusively DS9. No, I have a lot of episodes that would be not Deep Space Nine episodes. I think Amok Time is a great episode. I think City on the Edge of Forever is a great episode. I think, what's another great TOS episode? Balance of Terror is a terrific episode. The Trouble with Tribbles is a really good episode. For Next Gen, I mean, Chain of Command is awesome. Tapestry is awesome. Hide and Q, I think. A lot of the Q episodes are really good. I could come up with a bunch of non-Deep Space Nine episodes for a top 50 without having to exclude Deep Space Nine. There would be a lot of Deep Space Nine on my list. Don't get me wrong, but it wouldn't be all Deep Space Nine by any stretch. Some random geek wants me to plug Social Justice Alchemy once again. The link to the channel is there in his question. Social Justice Alchemy with Some Random Geek, John Brockman, Tom McDonald, Jamie J, and Leto Anor. 6 p.m. UTC, 2 p.m. EST every Saturday on the Social Justice Alchemy channel. Check it out. And also the charity links below. Everybody, please check out the charity links below. I screamed, sorry, modern content. I screamed tentacle porn right as a client walked in. I apologize. And I apologize especially to the client if that was a problem for them. Yeah, check out the charity links below in the description. A lot of our friends need some help, unfortunately. Lore Reloaded. Sean Hartley says, I saw a reaction stream from Lore Reloaded about one of your videos. He was respectful, but came across quite harsh in his opinions of you. Any thoughts on his channel and such? Honestly, I know him a little bit. Like, we've interacted a lot in the past, and we've always been on friendly terms, and I think we're still on friendly terms personally, but I don't really pay much attention to his internet stuff anymore, and I don't follow him on Twitter anymore. I used to, but I just had to stop because just when he and I politically are just, we're too... I think we're just too far apart. I mean, he's a lot more reasonable than some other people I could think of, and he's always been very nice to me. We've always been friends, and I have nothing against him, but I don't really watch his channel, and I don't really pay much attention to him these days because I just feel like we're too far apart on things. And T-Scream80, I'm familiar with SF Debris, but I can't say I've ever actually watched a video. Jamie J, does your wife worry about you? Is she currently concerned for your safety? Not in any particular way. She's expressed concerns before, but I don't think she's worried for anything specific. She just worries in general. If I piss somebody off on the internet, what if they find you? What if they find you while you're out in public? Just sort of, generic, concern. But I don't think she's seriously worried about anything. There's Jason. Opinionville is with us. You can see how far behind I am in the chat. So the question is, nothing rides on your answer, but out of all the guys you've collaborated with, who is your favorite and has changed your life forever, and who will you run away with and go on a big life adventure? Oh, gee. I mean, Serious Mind is really cool. No, it's... Obviously, it's you, man. Obviously, it's you. Obviously, we're the ones that are going to run away together eventually. Obviously, you're my favorite collaborator. I feel like I need to quote MacGyver. I need to quote Quayle from the first season MacGyver episode, where he was like, what should I call you? My perfect collaborator in this delicious charade. Although it's not a charade. But that's what Quayle said, so that's what I said. But yes, of course it's you, you compliment fishing bastard. You shameless fisher for compliments. Jamie J says, are Toby and Jack BFFs, or do they just fuck? No, they're BFFs. They are in a very close, committed relationship. They're not exclusive, they're not monogamous, but they're not, at the moment, they're not actively poly either. Right now, they're just fucking each other. But if one of them wanted to fuck somebody else, or they wanted to bring a third person in and make it a triangle, they would be open to that. They're very, very open. I describe Toby Benson as a sexual omnivore, and I think Jack is pretty much the same. So no, they're not just fuck buddies. They're very, very close. Oh, some random geek says, thanks. This is good job on the Aaron Eisenberg video. Well, I'm glad people liked it. It was just, I felt like I needed to say something about Nog, given the fact that I didn't get a chance to mention him during the last Trek Actually video because it was already shot when I learned of his death. So I wanted to do something special. Jason says, I didn't mean to trigger a MacGyver quote. Honestly, dude, that can happen at any moment. With me, as I think you probably know, or at least strongly suspect, virtually anything that you say or anyone else says about anything at any time could trigger a MacGyver quote, because there's a lot of MacGyver floating around up here. So yeah. Carlisle Cinephile says, are you going to see Joker? Probably. Yeah, I might. I don't know if I'll see it this weekend. I think I might be busy this weekend, but I really do want to see Joker. And I hope the controversy around it does not reflect the content of the film. You know, I hope that it's a good movie, but we'll see. And Philip K. I just saw said, have you seen any of Earth Final Conflict or Andromeda, the shows made after Roddenberry's death based on his notes? No, I have not seen either of those. I think I might have seen a little tiny bit of Andromeda once upon a time back in the day when it was actually airing, but I haven't seen any of them like significantly. Plasma Burn Death says, thoughts on Trump sucking at being a dictator and very weak. Hitler, Stalin could do the work to make up dirt on political enemies. Trump uses his own government, needs help like a child from others. Yeah, that's. I think I mentioned that in the answer to an earlier question. Like, one of the things about Trump, along with everything else, is that he's just terrible at everything he does. Like, he's incompetent. It's not just that he's evil and bigoted and like a shitty person. He sucks. Like, he's really shitty at the job he's trying to do. Like, I agree. He's trying to be a dictator and he just sucks at it. Like, you can't go through, if you want, like I mentioned this on the Facepalm 5. It's bad enough that he solicited help from a foreign government to dig up dirt on his political rivals. That's wrong and bad and a crime, no matter how you do it. But he was so fucking lazy that he just does it on a phone call. He just does it on a regular phone call that a bunch of other people are listening on, that there are official records about. He can't come up with some kind of secret back channel to ask the president of Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden. He just fucking picks up the phone in the Oval Office and calls the guy, and he's like, oh, hey, by the way, could you maybe do us a favor and dig up some dirt on the guy I might be running against? Like, he's so fucking terrible at his job. So, yeah. Okay, let me see. I'm going to scroll back up and see if there are any good questions I've missed. We're past the time I usually wrap this up, so I'm going to try to go through the last of the questions and then wrap this up. So, okay, Jamie J says, do Jack and Toby want to form a triad with me? I mean, you'd have to ask them. They might be up for it. I don't know. Or maybe they would, I don't know. I don't think they would say no, like, off out of hand. I mean, they maybe let them get to know you a little bit, and then we'll see where things go. I mean, I think just knowing them, like, they would definitely be up for sex. Like, Jack and Toby would definitely be up for sex. That's just... I feel comfortable speaking for them in that instance. They're DTF pretty much all the time. T Scream 80 says, what are your opinions on flat earthers, dinosaur deniers, and similar characters? I think they're silly and foolish and wrong. Do Jason and Steve's wives know each other? Do they know the love their husbands have for each other? I don't think our wives have ever actually spoken. But yes, they are aware. They are aware of the love that we share for each other. I'm not sure how they feel about it. But I don't think I don't think they've ever actually spoken, but they are aware. They are aware. Phoenix Espresso says, I left a comment further up regarding a video series by Mr. Atheist. You don't have to comment on it if you have nothing to say, but I don't know whether tagging you could have made you... Yeah. I don't think I've ever watched... I don't remember ever watching anything by Mr. Atheist, so I can't comment. Yeah, Philip K says, at least Nixon hired guys to break into a hotel. It's just so... He's just so bad. It's not just that he's an evil fuck. He's so bad at being an evil fuck, which just makes it worse. It just makes it worse. Okay, last question. This is from Jules DuPont. Can you find one redeemable quality to Voyager? I can find many redeemable qualities to Voyager. Absolutely. Just because Voyager is my least favorite Trek show doesn't mean that I hate everything about it. I'm sorry. Jason just said, why don't you take your real wife Steve to see Endgame? I had the same conversation. I went to see Endgame by myself. I wasn't gonna put my wife through that. I wasn't gonna make my wife sit there for 3 hours and watch a superhero movie with me. So I went by myself. If me and Jason lived closer together, we could have gone together. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Sean. I appreciate it. Anyway, redeemable things about Voyager. The acting is mostly pretty good. The characters are all potentially interesting on paper, like they don't really do anything with them throughout the show. But on paper, like, Tom Paris is an interesting character. Harry Kim is an interesting character. Captain Janeway is an interesting character. Like, they all have really interesting places to go. They just don't usually go there. And Voyager has some good episodes. Like, there's a lot of redeeming qualities about Voyager. It's just overall, I don't think it's a very good show. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. I am going to call the festivities to a close now. There goes the on-screen live chat. Thank you all so much for the questions. Thank you all so much for those of you who donated super chats. I really, really appreciate that. Thanks to all of you who are Patreon patrons of mine. If you want to support this channel, you can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives and become a patron. And you can, one of the benefits is you can ask questions for Ask Away ahead of time. And you get your question answered guaranteed, and you don't have to take a chance as to whether or not I will see it in the live chat. So that's something you can do. And also, since I'm plugging my stuff, I want to remind everybody once again, the charity links in the description. Please help out some of our friends who need a helping hand financially, if you can. If not, please share the various links on your social media and help our friends out who need a helping hand. Also, I want to remind you, especially since Jason is in the live chat, and it would break his heart if I didn't plug our podcast, I want to remind you that in addition to the YouTube stuff, I also co-host a couple of podcasts, which are part of the Let Me Listen family of podcasts. Jason and I co-host Late Seating, the movie review podcast, where we take a look at classic films and decide whether or not they deserve whatever reputation they have, be it good or bad. You can listen to our most recent episode of Late Seating, which is our review of the classic Jackie Chan film, Drunken Master 2, also known as The Legend of Drunken Master. And you can hear the new episode of our Star Trek-themed comedy podcast, The Ensign's Log, where Jason and I play low-ranking officers serving aboard a certain famous Federation starship as it goes about its business on its legendary 5-year mission. I think you can tell what I'm getting at here. So if you have not listened to the Ensign's Log yet, please check it out, especially if you like my Star Trek stuff. I think you'll really enjoy the Ensign's Log. Jason and I have a great time doing it. One of my favorite things that I've ever done is the Ensign's Log, and we have an absolute ball doing it. And we are very grateful that so many of you have been listening to it. So check that out. You can listen at letmelistenpodcast.com, or links to both podcasts are in the description of this video. You can listen on SoundCloud or subscribe via RSS using your favorite podcast app. Listen to Late Seating and the Ensign's Log. That's it for me, everybody. Thank you so much for the questions. Thank you for watching. I will see you again in 2 weeks' time for another Ask Away stream. And until then, take care, everybody.